Pet Life Radio.
This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. I'm really super duper excited to talk to our next author. She's a award-winning author, speaker, syndicated humor columnist. She does a little bit of everything and all of it really, really good. Of course, we're talking about Tracy Beckerman, and Tracy's going to talk to us a little bit about her latest book, Barking at the Moon. A story of life, love, and kibble. So we know what that's going to be about. So we're super duper excited to talk to Tracy. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
How many of you have pets? My hand's raised. Now think about how lucky you are to have such a sweet little pet in your life, and that pet is lucky to have you too. But unfortunately, there are countless pets out there that don't have a home to call their own. However, Bob's from Skechers is trying to change that. So we developed Bob's for dogs and cats to help pets in need. With every purchase of adorable Bob's footwear or fun, stylish apparel, or even the cutest Bob's pet accessories, Skechers makes a donation to Petco Love to help save shelter pets. And with your help, we've already saved the lives of over 1 million pets and raised over $7 million. So while you're getting style and comfort with features like Skechers' famous memory foam cushioning, you're also helping to save an adorable pet in need and helping another lucky owner be connected with a future best friend and companion, because happiness is having a loving pet by your side. Find Bob's at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, select Petco locations, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Join us now is award-winning author, speaker, syndicated humor columnist. She's been on NBC, CBS, all the stations. She's been up and down the dial, we'll say, for us old schoolers. We've got author Tracy Beckerman on the line and with us today. So, Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm really happy to be here. I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. We'll try to entertain and educate at the same time, which is a good juggling act. So I want to talk to you about your latest book, Barking at the Moon, a story of life, love, and kibble. So tell us a little bit about the premise of the book and how it all came about.
Sure. When our kids turned 5 and 7, we decided the time was right to get a dog. And they've been begging for it. You know, it's like it was even a higher priority than Disney World. So we got this cute, sweet puppy who then just proceeded to destroy our house. So, you know, the book is partly about our time with Riley, who is the star of this story. But it's also about noticing how fast those years fly and making time, as Riley would say, to stop and smell the fire hydrants.
Yeah, they do. I know we were talking briefly offline, and that time flies. And I think it's because animals have a purpose, as we know, and they're so focused. They're here to not only provide love, but they got a nice purpose that for being here, and they focus on it. And then when that time's done or that body's no longer serving them, they're ready to move on. So a lot to learn from our dog friends for sure.
It's so crazy because our dog recently passed, not the dog in the book, but the next dog. And the next day we were walking outside and I looked up and there was this giant white cloud. And one side of it looked like the face of our dog, who was also white. And it just, we're like, oh my gosh, he's looking at us from heaven and he's telling us he's okay.
That's it. That's it. Well, you know, not to sidetrack from the book a little bit, but I do have a lot of clients, a lot of consultations. And that's one of the things I talk about. I've seen this not only in my own experiences, but with my clients time and time again. I do believe they come back around and make appearances and make themselves known. It could be in footsteps or warm places on the carpet or the bed, or it could be barking. It could be a cloud in the sky. So I think they make themselves very well known to let us know that they're going to be here and our little furry angels now.
That's great. Yeah, well, you know, they make themselves very well known when they're here. So I'm not surprised if they're doing it after the fact. My husband and I are walking around the house and we're still kind of avoiding the place where we know his bowls are because we don't want to trip over them, even though they're not there anymore. He was always underfoot and next to us and around us. And it's funny because, you know, a lot of people got dogs during the pandemic and there've been a lot of stories about that, these pandemic dogs, right? We already had our dog, but he really, I do understand what that was about, because it's funny, when we first got Riley, I thought that we were doing it for the kids, and I didn't realize he was going to end up being my best friend, my therapist. And it was the same thing with Monty. And I realized that dogs are great no matter what stage of life you're in or what situation you're in, because they listen when you complain, right?
Right.
They get excited when you're excited, and they comfort you when you're sad, and they'll stick by you no matter what. Unless they hear some food drop on the floor. But, but you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when that food drops on the floor, you know where you really rank. Are you
That's
number
right.
one on the list or number 2 or 3, maybe?
I guess it depends on what the food is. If it's lettuce, maybe not so interesting.
Yeah. Maybe a sniff and then it's like, what is this? So when Riley came into your life, obviously, like you said, it's for the kids, and quickly you learned that it was going to be a little furry soulmate for you, we'll say. At what point did you realize that some of these crazy things that just drove you bonkers were actually kind of life's lessons in what you've learned since that time?
It's funny because there was a parallel between raising the dog and raising the kids, which kind of is this continuing theme throughout my book. The kids get older, there are new challenges. The dog gets older, there are new challenges. So I kind of looked at the dog experience the same way I looked at the kid experience. In the beginning, it was so overwhelming, and it just felt like so much work. Puppies are adorable, babies are adorable, but there's so much work.
Yes, they are.
Fortunately, you can house train your dog faster than you can ever potty train your kids. So for that, I was grateful. Although there's some stories in the book about how difficult that was with Riley. he was a little house train challenged, I think. But part of the problem was we were trying to housebreak him while we were in a hotel in the middle of a hurricane. So you have to read about that. It's a long story. But it was what I learned with the kids, what I learned with the dog, is that it's the best thing you can do is have a sense of humor through all of this. Because if you take it too seriously and you get bogged down by all of the work, you're not going to enjoy it. But if you turn around and you say, oh my God, that thing the dog just did, that was so funny. That's where I started coming from. And then he became a lot of, material for my syndicated newspaper column. And a lot of people responded to that because they could all relate. They're sweet, they're lovable, and they're very funny.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And you're right about, especially at the puppy stages. I know from one of my most recent pups that's staring at me and not allowed in the room right now. We went, I think, 20 years between having, dogs and pups. We adopted dogs, that were 1 year old, 18 months, whatever it may be. So we hadn't had a pup since, our college days. And that was maybe even longer than 20 years. You know how it is when get as time moves on. But we thought, okay, this is the right fit. It's the one that chose us. So we have to go with this. And
I love that.
We realized, let's just say my rear end got a little numb from sitting on the floor for hours on end, playing with the puppy and throwing the ball and getting the ball and throwing the ball and getting the ball.
But that's great. I mean, that's what you do. That's what you do with the kids. You get on the floor and you play with them. And that's what you do with the dog. You get on the floor and play with them until they're bigger and you can throw the ball out the back door and, have them run and chase it that way. We had a golden retriever. The dog that just passed was a golden retriever, and Riley was a flat-coated retriever, which for people who don't know or haven't heard of them, looks like a black golden, basically. Same disposition, same hair that sheds all over the place. But, the sweetest dog, once we kind of got past that crazy puppy stage, which lasted until he was about 2 years old. So
the terrible twos, as they say,
right.
Getting through that.
It's funny because my husband and I both grew up with dogs, and it was a wonderful experience. So we wanted our kids to have the same experience. But the dogs that we grew up with were these calm, normal dogs, and Riley was Dogzilla. So, our hectic young family got much hecticer. And we used to say in hindsight, we probably should have started with something more benign like a cobra.
Exactly. And sometimes nowadays when I talk to people and talk to clients and guests, it's not just dogs and cats anymore. It could be the cobra, it could be the bearded dragon or the lizard or the snake.
Yeah,
kids nowadays seem to be fascinated by all that.
We had all that. We had the dog, and we had this revolving fishbowl of goldfish. And, my kids would go to a street fair and they'd win a goldfish and bring it home. And I'm like, okay, we have another pet now.
At least for a couple of days. We know how
I
those
know.
fair
You know what? I'm glad you said it. I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, they have hard lives.
Yes, we would have our, our memorial services around the burial at sea in the bathroom, that whole thing. Okay, so then my daughter got a chinchilla and my son got a bearded dragon, which was my compromise after he asked for a tarantula. I'm like, no, big hairy spiders. No, we're not going to do that.
No, especially when they get out.
That's right. Oh my God. Well,
so you've experienced all that. You've been through all that. The plethora of furry, fin-scaled friends.
Exactly. And then the ones we didn't anticipate, like the mice that got into the house. And, we went through a couple of hamsters and a guinea pig and, all of those sort of trial pets before we got to the dog. It's funny because I think sometimes people get a dog as a trial before they have kids.
Yes.
It's kind of like you start with the plant. Okay, if I can keep the plant alive, then I'll move on to like small animals and then I'll move on to a dog. Dog's doing great. Okay, let's have the kids now. And we kind of did the whole thing in reverse. We started with the kids and we went to the dog and we kind of worked our way down the chain. But it was fun. It was a zoo, but it was a lot of fun. I don't understand people who say, oh, no, we don't want to have any pets. It's like, how can you not have a pet?
Yeah.
They're the best things in the world.
That's right. It rounds out the family. And like you said, dogs or cats, but dogs in particular, I always find that, they know the right and perfect time when to heal you. And like you said earlier, when you're sad, they'll pick you up. They'll do something silly.
Oh, yeah. They're so intuitive.
Yeah. If you trip and fall, they come and take a look at you and sniff it and make sure that you're okay. And then they'll ask for the treat, of course, afterwards. But they're going to check on you first. So I can't imagine it either. We've had our plethora of animals. I counted at one point, not now, but at one point we had 2 dogs, 2 fish tanks, 8 birds, 1 turtle, 4 rabbits. And we had 13 feral cats that we trapped, neutered, and released, and they all decided to make our home their home. So
not so feral after all, huh?
Not so feral. And then, of course, my wife is a regular Ellie Mae Clampett, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the feral cats had to have the garage propped open and have heated beds and have, places to lay. And it's like, the only thing that stopped them from coming in the house were the dogs and my allergies to cats, even though I love cats.
Yeah, my husband and my son have the same thing. It's funny because my kids I think that in the way that they've benefited from having pets is that they are so loving and open to animals now who need help. My daughter heard this mewing one day and she opened up the door to the house and there was this feral cat, big, huge, pregnant feral cat. And she just walked into the house, trustingly, walked into my daughter's bedroom and gave birth to 6 kittens. And, my daughter sat with her the whole time. And it's like, here's a cat who maybe isn't so trusting of humans, but in this moment of her need, she came, she sought out my daughter, and she got the help that she needed. So the kittens are now 8 weeks old. If you want one, let me know because they still have 2 that haven't been adopted.
Oh my goodness. That's sort of, ours didn't come into the house to have their babies, but we had with the feral gang that we had a beautiful orange cat, Charles, and Charles kept showing up and I kept saying, oh boy, we're going to have to, okay, we'll feed him. Of course, then about a week later, he brought his 3 mistresses with him. And then all of them, of course, each of those 3 were pregnant. And that's how we ended up with 13 cats. And
Charles had a harem, huh?
Yeah, he did. He got around. He's a man around town. That's for sure. But I think you're right. I think, it teaches children about caring and compassion and teach them how to take care of others. And I think from our own standpoint, it sort of expands our reach a little bit more, doing things for them and getting things back from them that we never, expected or knew would happen.
I think that the main thing that having a dog teaches kids is that it's a good lesson in unconditional love. It's like they don't expect anything back. They're not going to not love you for any reason. They may be mad at you, if you don't allow them on the bed or whatever. Our dog, Monty, used to turn his back on us when he didn't get what he wanted. He'd sit down with his back to us for, like 10 minutes. And then finally he'd get over it and he'd come back over. It's like, okay, I forgive you now, which we thought was hilarious. But I have to tell you, no one has ever looked at me the way that dog did. And it wasn't just because I had dog treats in my hands. There was so much love in his eyes. And, I just felt obligated to pay it back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good on you. Good on you. So when you put together the book, Barking at the Moon, was this something where you collected stories, like you said, wrote your syndicated columns and said, hey, this could be something interesting that people would like and benefit from? Or was it more of, okay, I'm going to sit down and after all it's said and done and put together some sort of a nice, fun and heartwarming tribute?
Well, maybe a little bit of both, but I have to tell you, this was my pandemic book. People have different things that they accomplished during the pandemic. So aside from, baking chocolate chip banana bread and eating chocolate chip banana bread and then looking like a loaf of chocolate chip banana bread, I thought that, it might be fun to do something that was actually positive and beneficial to the world. So I just started thinking, what would that be? Was long overdue for another book. The last one had come out in 2013. And then I realized that my last book, Lost in Suburbia, a memoir, kind of ended where this one would pick up, because my kids were then at the age 3 and 5, and this is a couple of years later. And so sort of the natural transition for me into this next phase of my memoir life, which was the time that we had these pets and this dog. So I realized that that was the logical next step. And in terms of pulling together material, it was so easy, because I had some of the columns to help me remember when things happened, but the stories, the time that we spent together just kind of came flooding out. And I think that has so much to do with the impact that the dog has on your life. If you ask me what my kids did when they were like 5 or 7, I'd be like, I don't know. But if you ask me about the dog during that same time frame, I could, just tell you lots and lots of stories about what happened then, from the time that he was a puppy until, the time that he became a much older dog.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, kudos on a good use of your time, a great use of your time on that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we'll come back and talk to Tracy Beckerman a little bit more about the book, Barking at the Moon, and also want to pick her brain a little bit about writing styles. How is it writing a syndicated column compared to putting together a humor/heartfelt book? So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms, and our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our wonderful conversation with award-winning author, speaker, and syndicated humor columnist Tracy Beckerman, and her latest book, Barking at the Moon. So, Tracy, when people pick up a copy of the book and read through it and just thoroughly love it, what do you hope they walk away from? Was there a goal you had in mind, or after you wrote it, you thought, okay, this is a good takeaway?
Yeah, I really wanted them to it was partly educational. I wanted them to understand that it's really important to always have nature's miracle carpet cleaner on hand if you have a dog.
Yes.
And also to realize that another really important thing is to keep the cover of the garbage can on at all times. So some real serious life lessons in there, but mostly what I wanted them to do was laugh, especially this time, these last couple of years. It's just like, oh my gosh, everything feels so oppressive and impossible and hopeless. And then, so here's a book that you can read full of hope, full of joy, and full of laughter. And isn't that exactly what we all need right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a job well done on that for sure. The thing is, when you read through the book, your humor comes through, and obviously you connect with Riley right away inside the book, and those little life lessons come through. When we talk about writing, obviously you're at such a young age, a seasoned veteran when it comes to writing.
Such a young age. Oh my goodness. All right.
Just say thanks, Tim, and move on.
Thank you, Tim.
Talking about writing styles, you mentioned earlier that book, kind of came naturally because you had some columns that you've written, and then you had the material. Obviously, you knew Riley very well. These type of things. But what I find, the question I have for you is, you could have so much material. How was it that you sorted through it and decide, okay, here's the start, and here's the end, and what do I do with these other, 20,000 great stories about Riley that I don't have no chance that my editor will allow me to put in this book because it's not, War and Peace.
Right. Well, I had these hundreds of columns, and the first thing I did was I sent them all to an editor, and I said, what do you pick like your top 20 or your top 40, because I want to weave a story together here. I don't just want to have a collection of columns. So, she was merciless, and she came back with the list. And I'm like, but what about the other one? It was so funny. And it was so, and she was like, So, because I really wanted to tell the story chronologically, it was important for me to show like I said before, the kids getting older and the dog getting older and those parallels. So that's the hardest thing when you're a writer, is having somebody come back to you and say, you should take out this or you should change this, because you feel like every single word you've put down on paper is gold, because it took so long for you to get it down on there. They always show these comics and cartoons of, these suffering writers in front of a computer or a typewriter and a blank page or a blank screen, and them just feeling like they're never going to get anything written. And we've all been through that at some point or other. So we can look at it and laugh, but also maybe react a little bit with fear for the next time we have to write something. I've gotten really good at writing really fast. And that actually didn't start with my syndicated column or any of the books I've written. It started in my pre-writing life. Well, I was still a writer. I was a writer-producer for Channel 2 News in New York, a promo producer. And so the things that I would write were these 30-second promos that usually started with, tonight at 11, could your dry cleaners be killing you?
So you're to blame for those. Okay, now I know
that's
who.
Me. They called me the queen of fear. I didn't actually think I had a funny bone in my body. But the reason that we had to write so quickly is that a lot of times they would come to us in the morning and say, we have the story that we want you to promote for tonight's news. So I had basically 6 hours to turn around a 30-second script and turn it into this wonderful promo. So you get really good, really fast. And I was able to take that same skill and use it in terms of creating a syndicated column. And the humor came out when I realized how funny my kids were. Something happened with my son one day at school, and it was really funny. And for some reason, and I was a full-time stay-at-home mom at this point, but I wrote down the story. I embellished it a little bit and put some more humor into it. And then on a whim, I sent it to our local newspaper, and they ran it. And they called me back and they said, do you have any more? And I'm like, more what, kids? And they're like, no, more columns. I'm like, oh, was that a column? I was so naive. So I started doing it for this one newspaper, and it was part of a bigger newspaper group. So their editors then contacted my editor and said, hey, can we run Tracy's column too? So all of a sudden I was in 7 newspapers, and then I started marketing it in 50 newspapers in New Jersey, which is where I live. And then I got picked up by a huge newspaper group, and all of a sudden I was national. I was in 36 states and then 42 states and hundreds of newspapers. And that was my gig for a long time, being lost in suburbia. And it was so successful because it resonated with so many other women who were home raising their kids and their dogs and their husbands, who are usually like another kid in the family. Yeah. And don't get me started on man colds either. So it was relatable, and the part about the dog was kind of like, oh, your dog yacked on the rug, my dog yacked on the rug too, and it was just something that anybody who had dogs or kids or pets or whatever, no matter where you lived, it was something that you'd experienced too. And to actually look at it from a humorous point of view, I think was really funny. I tell a lot of people, and this is going to age me terribly, but hopefully you have an older audience, that my inspiration was really Irma Bombeck. Mm-hmm. She wrote about family in a way that was humorous and very G-rated. I don't curse or talk about politics or religion or any of that stuff in my columns. So I had done this for about 10 years or so. And I was like, you know what? I really want to write a book. So the first book, which was called Rebel Without a Minivan, was very safe because it was a collection of my columns. But then I moved on to Lost in Suburbia, a memoir, and decided that was going to be the backstory to all of these columns. And that was a real challenge, because when you spend your career writing 550 words, and then they tell you you need 60,000 words to write a book, it's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I would like do a little chunk of the book and it would be 550 words. And the editor would come back and say, well, you need to really delve deeper into this. And I'm like, well, but that won't be funny. So it was really a time where I had to learn how to stretch and I actually had to, take some classes and talk to some people about writing books, because it did not come naturally to me. But by the time this one came along, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this.
There you go. It's great for those folks out here that are listening that are writers or want to be writers or start writing and looking to publish, whether it's a column or a book or whatever it may be, is you've got to have these building blocks.
Right. Well, I tell people a lot to start with blogs. You don't have a syndicated column, that doesn't matter. Write for a blog and then, write for some other magazines or whatever it is, just so you have the experience of writing. It's a muscle, you have to work that muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember quite a few years ago, I was invited to one of the local junior high schools. It was elementary/junior high school, whatever that grade is, where they shift from one when they care about what their teachers say to when they don't care about what their teachers say, whatever grade that is. And it was there to talk about writing in general. And I basically told them, I said, who here has written a story, and keep your hand up, and who here has written a blog, whoever's, I whittled it all the way down to the most basic, writing skills, even like texting, which is not much writing, but it's something. And so I can get all the hands up in the air.
Right.
And I said, congratulations, you're writers. And they looked at me and smiled. The teachers were like, okay, why did we invite this guy in? That's we're trying to get him not to text, not to, do this. Right. But it's true. You've got to have these building blocks, and whether you're doing it for yourself or you put it in a blog or, expand, put it in a column or a magazine, find these little avenues to put them in. I think it's a great building block. So when you are ready to, to publish, you either got the material already or most of it.
I feel like it's not just about building your writing skills. It's really about building your confidence. Because, you start out and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is very good. Maybe I should just publish it for free because, I'm not really a writer. And I'm like, from the minute you put that word down, you are a writer. And you deserve to be paid for that too. I mean, don't get me started on this whole thing about, writing for exposure.
Well, my theory on writing for exposure is if you keep writing for exposure, you will be exposed because you won't have any clothes on your back or a house to live under.
Right. I said, if you're writing and it's being published, you should be paid for it.
Absolutely.
Because exposure doesn't pay the rent.
That's it. And I love how you said it, how it sort of parlays into these opportunities. You write, you find an opportunity to write, or someone, approaches you to write a column or write, some little ditty, and you do that. And the next thing you know, 2 or 3 more, and then 2 or 3 more. And then all of a sudden you're writing on a regular basis and getting paid for it. And like you said, being very smart and intelligent and a great marketer, you're like, I can make more money if I can get this out even further. So let's put it out there.
Well, when you're a writer, you have to not only be a writer, but you also, like you said, you have to be a marketer and you have to be a researcher. And then you have to be an accountant, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But it's just, a lot of people kind of wait for it to come to them. And I say when I'm teaching at conferences, it's like, you have to be aggressive. You are your own advocate, and you have to go out and look for these opportunities and make a case for why somebody should want to run your column or your story or whatever it is going to be. And that is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people, for writing, it's an isolated introvert experience. And it's great because I don't have to see anybody. I don't have to talk to anybody. These are the same people who are like, I have to stay home for the pandemic. I'm okay with that.
Exactly.
So, being aggressive in terms of marketing yourself and your work is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. So you kind of have to get over that hump. And that's part of the confidence thing that I was talking about before.
Yeah, I think it's very important. It's a very good point you bring up, because you do have to, it's not like the olden days, right. they don't come knocking at your door and give you a nice, advance on the book and send you on a whirlwind book tour. And nowadays, if you get any fraction of that, you're doing pretty well for yourself. But
I know, advance. That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's such an old terminology nowadays. Right. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, we're definitely excited about it. Tracy, so much. Thanks for coming on the show. Where can people find out more about you and all the wonderful activities you got going on, all your books, all the columns, all that great stuff?
Okay, well, this is really easy. Go to tracybeckerman.com and you will find me. You can also go to lostandsuburbia.com or any iteration of any of those, because I own all of those URLs, to make sure that you can find me pretty easily. And I also have a bio on Amazon. You can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any bookseller online to buy the book. You can order it and have it sent to your home, or you can download it to Kindle. There's an e-version, and people keep telling me I need to do an Audible version of this. So I think that will be forthcoming. But in the meantime, yes, go buy the book. It'll make you laugh. And if you are a dog owner, it'll make you smile with recognition and warm your heart.
Absolutely. It definitely will do that. The book is Tracy Beckerman's book, Barking at the Moon, a story of life, love, and kibble, of course. So everybody go pick up a copy and get an audio. Follow Tracy on all of her wonderful sites and such old school, tracybeckerman.com. So that works out fantastic. So Tracy, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We'll look forward to hearing more from you and seeing you some more down the road.
Thank you so much for having me on. By the way, if you come to my house, I'll be standing outside giving away cookies and selling copies to people too.
There you go.
Because I'm an author and that's what we do. We do those kinds of things to sell books.
That's right. That's right. Well, you were eating your profits when you were making, what was it, the chocolate chip?
Chocolate chip banana bread.
Yeah, eating up all your profit. Come on, you got to cut that up and sell it on the sidewalks.
That's a good idea. No, I'll give it away. You buy the book, you get my banana bread.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right. Fantastic. Tracy, thanks again. And best of luck. Congratulations on the book. And we'll talk again real soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank the producers and sponsors for making this show possible. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for the show, or people you want to hear from on the show, you can drop us a line. It's at petliferadio.com. And while you're there, check out all the other wonderful shows and hosts. It's a cornucopia of fantastic entertainment. So check it out at petliferadio.com. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life, put it in a blog, an article, or in a book, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.